Good afternoon, Britannia, and hello to the rest of the world. Welcome to 2CTV, your global news channel. We come to you guys with some breaking news from Mannheim in Germany. As yet, we had another attack, once again involving a car into a market in the city center in Mannheim. We're going to give you guys the latest update on this. We have some videos from the scene itself, a statement from the local police in Mannheim, and some very disturbing images as well. So just a quick heads up, I've done a bit of blurry thing so you don't really get completely, it's still quite visible unfortunately, just a heads up in advance. And everything else that's still coming, we are getting the live updates as it comes. So far, it's just been confirmed over the last few minutes that unfortunately 2 people have been confirmed dead. Many people are injured. This attack, obviously, we've had a number of attacks in Germany over the last few months. This is extremely serious. Several people are seriously injured. As we said, initially 1 person was confirmed dead, and now the second one has now been confirmed. That the number of casualties could go up over the next few minutes and hours, but we're also getting updates from the paramedics on the ground that unfortunately several limbs can be found on the street and on obviously on the pavement as well. The car, the black SUV, was driven by an attacker. We're going to obviously give you guys all that information. First things first, this is where the location was in Mannheim in the southwest of the country. Again, when it comes to countries like Germany and even technically France, you're no longer just getting attacks in the capital cities or even major cities. We've had attacks in villages, in small towns and smaller cities, and in all different parts of the countries that we've mentioned. And we are getting more updates. I mean, when it comes to Mannheim, the last terror attack that they had was back in May 2024, only a few months ago, really, less than a year ago. And that was an Islamist Afghan so-called asylum seeker, illegal migrant, who went and attacked about 6 people, and 1 police officer unfortunately lost his life. Now, the problem we have is there has been a rise in attacks by failed asylum seekers and illegal migrants who are about to be deported, so they do these attacks. Let's go to the first video we have from Mannheim. Now, we are confirmation that the city center in Mannheim and the areas around the main markets have now been closed off. The investigation continues to make sure whether it was just 1 person or more people involved in this. The driver of the black SUV has been arrested for a few minutes after the attack. We also have a clip I'm going to show you, because for a few minutes after the attack there was a manhunt because clearly the attacker decided to run away from the police, so they had to chase him and eventually catch up with him. I think this is the next clip that we can show you, showing the police in Mannheim going after him.
Guck mal, sind da irgendeiner stirbt oder so. Alle holen Waffen raus direkt. Ich kenn da gar nichts, Mann.
So that was before they managed to catch him. So the attacker has been arrested. 2 people have lost their lives so far. Several limbs and blood can be found on the streets, and many people have been injured. They are being treated on the ground, and they're being sent to the local hospitals in Mannheim. Over the next few minutes and hours, we will get more confirmation from the authorities once they have questioned the man, the suspect, to find out more about the actual motive. And obviously, we've had a trend of these sort of attacks. And this usually tends to point out to one area, but we will get that information for you guys. Now, in terms of the other information, we have a statement from the police in Mannheim saying it's currently a police operation is still taking place in the city center of Mannheim. The police and rescuers are on their way as paramedics are treating the injured and wounded on the ground. Further information is not yet available. In this context, there may be a temporary traffic disruptions in the inner city, not just the city center, but also around it. So the main urban areas of the city center has completely been closed down. We will find out if they will find any more information within the next few minutes. Of course, this is live ongoing development, so if you're watching this later on or tomorrow, more information has already come out, but we'll stay with you guys and make sure we keep you guys informed on everything that is happening. I believe we can show you the next videos that we have. This actually shows the moment of the attack, but also just afterwards when people were on the ground injured. Just again, quick heads up, the disturbing images and footage.
Hat es was geknallt oder was?
Ja, ja, die Frau hat gemeint, die Frau hat so gemeint. Ich weiß.
And as we said, there are some other disturbing images. I blurred relatively this photo that I'm about to show you. Just a heads up. This is there are limbs just on the ground. This is the leg image. Again, it's very disturbing. We will get more information on everything else that's coming out. There's a lot of other rumors and gossip on social media, which we have to verify them first before we actually show you anything that we have. We are awaiting more information. So in terms of the actual eyewitnesses as well, there are a lot of people who have now spoken to Mannheim and Morgan in terms of the local outlets, news outlets, saying that the witnesses saying a car raced through the city and hit the crowd on purpose. It seemed to be on purpose, obviously. And they have said that one of the eyewitnesses said you can only see the injured and the dead, and you don't know what to do. This is according to one eyewitness at the market, the car has been confirmed as a black SUV. We are also getting more information in terms of, hopefully we will get more information. Actually, they've said in terms of the identity of the attacker, who is still alive and is in custody of the police. Let's double check to see. Yeah, another eyewitness has now spoken to the local media. One of them saying that all hell broke loose instantly as the attack happened. This eyewitness was sitting in a nearby restaurant, saying that they saw people running away in panic after the car obviously targeted the crowd at the market in the city center. So local hospitals are now implementing, we can confirm, an emergency plan to change their daily routine for today, because of course a huge number of people are now being sent to the obviously local hospital. This is the Mannheim University Hospital. The emergency plan has now been activated, and they call it the disaster response plan. According to the DPA, the news agency, 8 trauma teams have now been made available on top of everything else, the resources that they have, both for adults and children. So they are implying that there have also been kids involved in this. The hospital, the Mannheim University Hospital, have now released a statement saying that the operations that could be postponed, that the actual routine one had not yet begun, have now immediately been removed from the operating schedule in order to create additional operating capacity. This is the biggest thing, by the way, because a lot of times when people talk about these attacks that happen on a regular basis in Europe, whether you're talking about the major city or a smaller town, firstly, that the lives of ordinary people are at risk. Going to a market and any city center is now dangerous in Europe. That's one thing, that you could lose your life, you could be massively injured. There's also a problem when it comes to just the overall national security panic. But thirdly, one of the major issues we also have is that it affects everything else in the area. That includes the local hospitals, the capacity of everything that's already been scheduled, as obviously the Mannheim University Hospital confirmed. Certain operations now have to be postponed, and other lives will also now be at risk, even if they were not actually at the scene themselves. And of course, everything else will also be disrupted in terms of the local people, the traffic, and the businesses and other lives as well, especially when we have a situation where we don't actually know if it's just right now one person or could it be more people as well. So obviously the actual the driver, the attacker suspect, has been arrested, but they are continuing with their investigation. It's definitely not a good time right now in Europe, as you guys already know. It seems like the German establishment still haven't really realized the anger coming from the local people, the natives across the country. And you've seen it as in terms of the response there from the recent elections in Germany. It seems to be business as usual. CDU leader Friedrich Merz is basically saying it's okay, we have a plan, but we don't know exactly what the plan is to make Germany safe again. And Mannheim, for example, is not necessarily a major city because it only has a population of 326 people, and it's also around, I think, about 50 miles south of Frankfurt. So a lot of people would expect these sort of attacks to just happen in Berlin, Munich, or Frankfurt, but that doesn't seem to be the case. There are rumors that the death toll has now risen to 3, but again, we'll get that verified before reporting. We will stick to 2. 25 have been confirmed injured, as 15 are in critical condition. So out of the 15, it would not be a surprise, unfortunately, if the number of casualties would rise from that. Let's get some reaction while we wait for more information from the authorities on the ground in Mannheim. Right. There's a quick super chat first saying that UAE foreign minister was right about the ignorance and arrogance of European leaders. You don't really get these sort of attacks in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, do you? CDU voters, pat on your back. You guys allowed this to happen. And Ashley says the German police need to get tough on these Muppets. I think it's not really just the job of the police, because the job of the police is just to basically enforce things at a time. It's the job of the political establishment to clean up the mess and deal with the rise of crime in countries like Germany. Another super chat from the Desert Vet, thank you, saying the plan is to conquer European countries and convert them into Islam, and that is the end. But one of the trends that we have been seeing from in Germany specifically previously in recent months and years is a lot of attacks now happen once an illegal migrant has been rejected their asylum case, and before they are deported in protest or retaliation or revenge, they tend to carry out these attacks, or perhaps they are seeing it as another way of staying in the country, because obviously if they commit a serious crime, then they will keep them in the prison system in Germany instead of deporting them back to their homeland. So you could perhaps also see that from that perspective, why these sort of attacks specifically is happening in Germany in terms of the motive, which is a failed immigrant taking revenge after being rejected. We don't really see this everywhere. It's currently a specific issue primarily in Germany, but you don't be surprised if it happens anywhere else. But obviously we don't know about this person, the identity. We don't know if it's an Islamist or the motive has been Islamism, but they will do their investigation. We will get that confirmed before we actually say this to you guys. We have Donald Duck, who doesn't seem to be happy in the live chat, saying more far-right talking points. Interesting. People have lost their lives today, by the way. Donald Duck will mean more attacks from the crazy Islamists. You neo-national socialists do understand that, right? Okay, interesting reaction to this. Dean says, where is the humanity today? The biggest majority of a society live with destruction in their minds. Love thy neighbor as you love oneself. Sadly, plotting and planning to kill. Yeah, the love thy neighbor. Don't know where that's gone because of, well, we know where that's gone because the Christian Europe is now being completely undermined, just overall in general. And it says, so have the hearing on asylum and deport. Have the hearing on asylum and deport from the court door, no opportunity to commit an offense. This is a very good point, by the way, and I've said this many times in the last few years. We have this issue in Europe where once you get rejected, you're not actually even in the courtroom necessarily. So they send you a letter. The judge will send you a letter eventually. Well, technically, the Interior Ministry or Home Office in this country will send you a letter. Then you can appeal it. Then it goes to the judge. You don't have to be in the courtroom. And then the judge will send you a letter and then say, please leave the country. That system must also change. There's a lot of focus right now to, for example, stop illegal migration and all that stuff. But you also have to focus on the deportation part. And you can easily fix it by just doing step one. As Aidan said, if there's going to be a hearing on your asylum, it has to be in person, not through a letter. And once you're there, if it's rejected, put them in a taxi, take them to the airport and send them out. But that doesn't really happen. Is it still Ramadan? Yes, so Ramadan's officially started, and historically speaking, every year the attacks escalate, the number of attacks in this so-called holy month that is supposed to be for peaceful people. That's the whole point of it, by the way. But attacks somehow increase during this month. We will get the confirmation on this, obviously. Someone says, I don't think they are taking revenge. If they had been accepted, they had intended to carry out attacks. So they carry them out before being deported when they're not given asylum. That's also a fair point. Although they could just carry out the attack whenever, as long as they're in the country. But yeah, that's a good point to be made as well. I'm just trying to see if we have any more live updates from the authorities on this. Yeah, we still have the 2 that have been confirmed dead, unfortunately. By the way, the actual incident itself happened at 12:15 p.m. local time in Mannheim. And, this is just a random, normal, average Monday afternoon in the continent of Europe. And you're just living in Mannheim. You're like, okay, well, I'm just living in my small city, going about my day, going to go to the market, going to go to the shops. And now this happens. And again, people would say if you talk about these things, you are actually then spreading more fear and chaos and division. But the problem is, the division is already here. The chaos is already here. If you talk about it, if you report it, for example, it's not that you are creating it. Now, some of these lovely people who have now lost their lives, last night they might have just had their own everyday activities. They could check the news. They might have been concerned. They might probably think, oh yeah, that happened in Munich. Luckily, it didn't happen in Mannheim. Well, it could have been me, but it wasn't. And then the next day, this happens to them. So it could be anybody watching this, unfortunately, any moment. And it shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be this in a civilized person, not in a civilized continent, technically, but in any country. You don't really have that in Pakistan. You can walk around. You don't really expect terrorist attacks to happen every day, even in those places. And again, there's a massive problem that is not being dealt with. Even in the third world, they tend to come up with some sort of response and approach. For example, when it comes to the Islamic State, the ISIS guys, obviously, these are Sunni extremists. They also carry out attacks inside Iran because the Islamic Republic are Shia, and they have that problem with them. And they have carried out a number of attacks. A few attacks in Iran, and since then, obviously, and obviously the IRGC, the Islamic Republic, are a bunch of nutters. They're also terrorists, but their response against their enemy, which is a Sunni extremist, have been insane. They send out the proxies and the militias to Iraq to destroy, to take revenge. We don't tend to do anything. We don't tend to actually forget about revenge. Forget about even self-defense or counterattack. We're not even seem to be trying to stop it. Stop the actual attacks. Super chat from David saying, how do you think the recent election results in Germany will affect the trend of these events? I mean, firstly, it's business as usual. In fact, you can make an argument that if hypothetically the AfD had won the election, which they were never going to win, but in this time round, but hypothetically if they had won, And obviously they had what the mainstream establishment would call radical policies, right? No, they weren't even that radical, by the way. You should have expected these attacks to actually increase under the first few weeks and months of the AFD government, because it will be a retaliation. It will be absolutely crazy. But what you're going to have is just, considering the government's approach is business as usual, the terrorists and the attackers and those who just are criminal in general, that their approach is also business as usual. So then the number of attacks you're going to get, whether it's going to be terrorist attacks, whether it's going to be gang war, or just criminals stabbing people or mugging people, I think this is just going to be the average rate that you are always going to get in 2025, in 2026, and so on. So I guess, I don't know if is that good news, that it's just going to be the average that you are always going to have. It's insane. But for example, when we talked about the problem in Europe, it's not necessarily always just about the organized Islamist issue. It's also again, it goes back to the third world culture. So in Belgium and Brussels, you have a massive problem with gangs, criminal gangs, that are not necessarily like your old school organized crime sort of thing, where you had, for example, the English in England, or the American Italian, the Italian American guys in New Jersey, in New York. That was a whole different culture. But you have organized criminal gangs who are either Eastern European or North African or Middle Eastern. All these is the result of not just mass migration or multiculturalism, but the fact that the European countries, mostly Western European countries and the Nordic ones, have not actually been able to promote their own values and good education system over the last 20 years or so, to actually be able to bring down the level of crime and the level of hate. That's the biggest issue. So you get attacks, you get crime from various different types of groups for different sort of reasons. One thing is common: lack of respect for the country, lack of respect for the flag of the country, and lack of respect for the rule of law and the authorities. That is what's common. What you get is different types of criminals and attacks, but the biggest common thing is they clearly hate the people and the country, because you have to treat your country as your home. And if you're going around in your own house doing chaos, and if you don't do it there, that means you shouldn't do it in the country either. But that sort of mentality doesn't really exist anymore, it seems to be. We still have a lot of good people in Europe who are still very patient. Look at Germany, look at France, look at the UK, but primarily look at France and Germany, what they've had to deal with for the past few months, and they are still very patient. Anything could have erupted by now, any sort of implosion within society, but no, they're still patient, they're angry, they're still patient, but the establishment shouldn't be complacent, because the implosion could come at any moment. Pilgrim Media says, I lived in Germany during Bad Mannheim. Thank you very much for that. We have hundreds of thousands now who have now entered the European continent, and it's difficult to. Every country has their own problem anyway. When it comes to your own people who are born in your country, doesn't matter what country you're in, you have issues with those who would become criminal. You have issues that will not have the best education system, so you have to improve all that, the job market, the business opportunities, prosperity. So you already have existing problems in every country. Then on top of that, if you bring in more people, not only you're not going to be able to keep an eye on the new people, but also you're going to neglect your existing people as well. So then crime will also go up from that side as well, from the actual people who are born here, as well as the newcomers. And lack of respect for the authorities will also increase overall, because people would not trust each other even more than before. You have small towns and villages, people leave their houses and they know their neighbor. They're like, oh, hello, good morning, everybody. Everybody knows everybody. That is going to go away, and it's already going away. Even in the UK, smaller towns and big villages basically are also having issues where people are coming to their town and nobody knows who anybody is anymore. So by human nature, we are tribal. So if you have a big group that you don't know, you're not familiar with, and the behavior is different, if that change happens instantly rather than gradual within decades or centuries, then obviously there's going to be more distrust and more clashes, more confrontation, and more crime. we're getting more information soon. I believe there's going to be an official statement again by the local police in Mannheim. We will wait for that to come in, and then obviously we'll confirm what they have said. Let's quickly go back to some of you guys while we're here. It's me. Oh my God, diversity hits again. Yeah, we'll get the confirmation on the actual identity of the person as well. Seriously, a terrorist just now got arrested in the building opposite my apartment in the Netherlands. That's breaking news. Whole SWAT team present. SWAT team, wow. Probably won't be on the news though. No damage was done, but he was shouting. If you have any information on that, feel free to send us an email, especially if you hear anything from the local authorities after what's happening right now in the building opposite your apartment. Feel free to send us an email. Obviously, if you go on 2c.tv, the link is in the description, and go on the contact page. Anything that was any information you have, I'll try and get in touch with our sources in the Netherlands. Also, even let me know where you are in the email, so we could actually do some digging to find out what's going on there. CC says a sudden spurt of violence and immigrants, and with billions missing in Ukraine, or in or out of it, in the Ukraine war funding, and the USAID going into the wrong hands, something is up. I shudder to think that these are all connected. It's just a complete lack of leadership right now that we're getting. A lot of people who are just completely destroying the whole West. If country moves towards wartime footing, everything could be a double-edged sword, with authorities actually dealing with criminals and illegals but losing liberty. But this is the other thing. A lot of people say, well, right now the authorities, the political establishment, are complacent. They're not doing anything about all the problems. The issue is, if it now gets to a point where our governments actually declare some sort of emergency, finally, then what they're going to do is they're going to use that. You're going to think, oh, that's good, finally, declaring an emergency. But they're going to use that to then bring down your liberties. They're going to do a crackdown on innocent people and everybody else. They always use any opportunity to increase their own control. So it's a lose-lose situation, because right now we want the political leaders to actually take action and for example, declare an emergency. But once they do it, they're going to use that against you. You just need better people in charge, which we currently don't seem to have. Stu says, give me the mafia any day. 5 edits to post this. Why? What were you typing before? Yeah, no. So that, as I said, there was a whole different type of culture when it came to, specifically when we're talking about the Cosa Nostra and the Italian side, well, the Sicilian side, especially in New Jersey, New York, even in Italy itself, South Italy, when it came to the culture of the as I would call it, the Catholic mafia. Not that they were Catholic. The mafia was Catholic. Well, the mafia people were Catholic, not the Catholic was the mafia. The difference was that there was a whole very specific culture, and they had certain values. Never harm civilians, never even touch your enemies' wives or children or family. They had certain, I mean, they were still criminal, obviously, but they also had values that, they, at least historically, they said, we're never going to touch certain things, including drugs. And once that happened, then obviously the whole thing went down. But again, that was a whole different culture, because speaking of obviously the criminal gangs and what's happening in Belgium, in Brussels specifically, it's so casual. So even if you talk about, for example, the Italian mafia, they had to be very stealth and very invisible and very anonymous and very quiet about it. Now you got these guys going around, walking around the city center in Brussels, holding big guns and massive knives. It's not like they're not even hiding themselves. There doesn't seem to be any urgency to be anonymous. Wolfgang says, I am from Austria, and we're not scared or frightened by this Mickey Mouse BS. Someone's not scared. Let's just double check, because I think we might have received a quick update on this. No. Okay. So we'll keep you guys posted. As I said, this is a live development. So if you're watching this later on, the update might have changed. We might have actually finally received the information about the identity and the number of casualties. So we'll do a follow-up live update once we have more information. Thank you so much for watching, and special thank you for everybody who's been supporting the channel and actually subscribing. We've now exceeded 773,000 subscribers. I'm Maya 2C, and we are the media.